Thanks for staying with us on The Real Story. The city of Hartford, one of several communities in our state in the red, according to the CDC. It has one of the highest rates of new COVID cases recently. Enough so that the mayor announced masks are now required indoors at businesses and restaurants. Other Connecticut cities also doing the same thing, though. Bridgeport, Stamford, and New Haven. But this latest case surge is coming right as parents and kids are getting ready for a new school year. And we know the last year that the kids were in session was incredibly trying for kids. Pastor A.J. Johnson joins us now. He's with the Urban Hope Refuge Church in Hartford. He's also a community organizer, and he recently joined Hartford's Board of Education. So we have a lot to catch up with him about on how the pandemic is impacting the community. Welcome back to The Real Story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and it's always a pleasure being back on Fox.
We love having you on here. So we want to start with the school year right now. Masks are going to be required, but this is a big deal for students to be able to go back to school because we had the remote learning last year. How are parents, though, feeling about sending their kids back from what you're hearing from community members?
Absolutely. That is a great question, and I just want to say that I am not the official spokesperson of the Hartford Board of Ed. We do have a chair, but I just want to tell you what I'm hearing from parents as I walk through the community. And shout out to Aisha Clark, our board chair for the Hartford Public Schools. But what we are hearing through our superintendent and from our parents that I encounter in my community is that parents are glad to finally be back in school, right? Especially those whose children were learning remotely last year. Remote learning has been a tough problem to get through, but parents press through. But naturally, as we look, parents are also looking to understand what protocols are going to keep our children safe. Parents want to know, are people required to wear a mask? Who is vaccinated? How do we keep our children healthy? And I just have to give our superintendent, Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez, a shout out that even before the city of Hartford called for a mask mandate, the superintendent had sent out communications home to our families on July 30th that Hartford Public Schools will be requiring everyone to wear a mask. Students in all schools, regardless of the vaccination status. So, a lot of parents are just trying to figure it out right now. But what we're trying to do is give the information and make it readily available so parents can take that step in getting their students back in school. But what I'm hearing is that parents are excited for their children to be back in school.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, last year was really tough for kids. Remote learning is not easy. I mean, schools did it and they accomplished it. And, kids should be so proud of being able to have learned from home. But it doesn't make up for in-person learning, of course. And we know we have a big achievement gap here in Connecticut between cities and suburbs. And so it makes it all that much more trying for kids in the city, I'm sure. How do teachers make up for lost time? We have kids coming back. Is there anything that can be done? What are you hearing? What's the sentiment in that area?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And to all the parents that are watching your show at this moment, I want to applaud you for getting through last year. Last year was different. One, we were asking parents to not only work, not only take care of homes, but to become teachers, certified teachers for their students. And it was completely impossible. So if you are a parent, I applaud you and really lift you up right now. But the pandemic has had an impact on all students, not just Hartford students, not just inner city students, but all students throughout the state of Connecticut. There were many interruptions in learning last year. And even though our students had been giving access to devices and internet connectivity and or hotspots, some of our families were not able to sit side by side by their students to support them at home. And that's, a lot of the reason of that is a lot of our parents in our particular school system, while others were working from home, literally had to go to work during that time and keep a job. So some parents were not at home helping their child through some of those things because they were essential workers, right? When we think of our essential workers, yes, we applaud them and we thank God for them, but we also have to understand that while we were at home working from home and from our laptops. They were in the nursing homes. They were in the restaurants. They were at the hospitals. They were the ones keeping our societies and communities going. So who suffered? Obviously, the children suffered through that. So we have a lot of work to do. We know that our students are going to need to catch up on learning. We also know that there's mental health, where there was isolation, right? Some learning loss due to COVID. And I can imagine the anxiety that some of our students might be feeling as they now head back to school. So this is why we're glad to see that the superintendent's recovery plan focus both on academic and social emotional wellness supports. We have to have those in place for our students, not only the academic, but the social emotional wellness supports. We are social creatures, right?
Sure.
And so we want to be around each other. So we are taking these steps, particularly in our school district. I know each school district across the state of Connecticut has their plan, but we really have to look at the social emotional wellness needs of our students as we go back into school. A lot of them have been dealing with a lot of different things. A lot of them have been dealing with not only just loss, but may have lost members to their family due to COVID, and they come back in school with that. Not only are students dealing with loss due to COVID, but even the violence in our community. Students are dealing with that as well. So we have to look at the social emotional wellness of our young people.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Pastor, because the last time you came on The Real Story, it was in April, and we were talking about that increase in violence. And we know that that's continued. That has continued. And I remember you saying that some of it was from the pandemic. What are you seeing and hearing?
Well, violence is something that you can't really have a magic ball, right, and figure out where and when violence is going to happen. But what we do know is that violence happens due to poverty, violence happens due to neglect, violence happens due to redlining, violence happens due to a host of inner city issues that if go unchecked, it spirals out of control. And now you put a pandemic on top of poverty, and violence is just completely out of control. In the city of Hartford, I drive my two sons to daycare every morning, and through the various streets that we drive through, there's yellow tape. And it hurts to see this in my community because people are really struggling. People are really hurting. We have young people that are just doing a lot of different things where they may not be able to come back from, and it hurts. But a lot of it is due to what we call this poverty issue, right? When I think of other communities throughout the state of Connecticut, communities where the median incomes are $218,000 and higher, they're not dealing with these issues. They're dealing with a host of, not saying that they're not dealing with any issues, but they're not dealing with these poverty issues. And everyone has to be not okay with this if this is going to change. You
are a church leader, so you're seeing and hearing. People are coming to you with their problems, how they're feeling. You and I had spoken before, and you had talked about how mental health was such a big issue right now. Tell me what you're hearing from worshipers.
Well, at this particular time, mental health is really, really big, right? Anxiety is really high, and depression is really, really high. As corporations begin to start opening up and having people go back to work, there's anxiety around that. When we look at how in my particular community, in the Black community, COVID-19 has taken a lot of our seniors, a lot of our loved ones, and a lot of us are still trying to figure out how to navigate life with these particular things that have happened. As we went back to opening, we have to also look at the fact that we also experience loss, right? And we all have to take a moment and realize that. I remember doing a funeral as a pastor, I've done several funerals during this pandemic, but one of the ones that hurt the most is a father and a son who I've never done two funerals at one day at the same time for a father and son that died to COVID, and so a lot of people are still grieving through this. And now, as we went through the mask mandate coming off, there was anxiety with that, but now we're asked to come back and do another mask mandate. And so people are grieving. And I think there has to be a level of grace as it pertains to jobs, as it pertains to coming back into work, as it pertains to things that really affect our lives. There has to be a level of grace and understanding with people during this time, particularly people that are dealing in poverty issues as well, because you stack all these anxieties and worries and you stack that with poverty, it's very challenging. But I believe, I believe personally in a higher power, and that we will be guided through this in a way, but we also have to have a moment of humanity and say that we all have to take a step back and just love on one another at this particular moment.
Well said. Pastor Johnson, is there anything that if someone is watching this and they aren't part of the Hartford community that they can do to help?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as it pertains to COVID, our church has partnered, Urban Hope Refuge Church has partnered with Union Baptist Church, and we have vaccine ambassadors out in the streets right now, and all throughout Hartford, all throughout the greater Hartford area, asking people if they want to get vaccinated or have they been vaccinated. If you want to help, I would ask that you get vaccinated. That is one way that we can curb this virus during this pandemic, is that we all have to do our part and be accountable to each other. The second thing that I would say to folks that are in congregations, in churches, if your church is not involved in social justice and you want to see places like Hartford change, you have to organize. You have to organize your voice and organize with people that are deeply affected so we can raise these issues, not only just in policy, but to affect change, right? We are tired of losing young men and women to violence. We are tired of these things happening in our community. And it's not going to change unless the towns and suburbs around us decide to change. And I want you all to hear that. This is not going to change unless something changes. And I believe that the suburbs and the towns around us have to take a concerted effort in issues of poverty and organize with us to make sure that we rid this thing called violence and that we make the social change that we want to see.
Pastor A.J. Johnson, always good to hear from you. Thanks for coming back on The Real Story.
Thank you so much for having me on The Real Story, and you keep up the good work, and I'm praying for you and your family.
Thank you so much. All right, that does it for us on The Real Story. If you want to watch these segments again, head to fox61.com or download the Fox 61 app and watch The Real Story every Sunday at 10 a.m. right here on Fox 61. Have a great morning.